This is my home, St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. John Dewey said that we only think when we're confronted with a problem. I spend a fair bit of time trying to write good, high-quality problems for my students. I've always thought that really great problems have three characteristics. They're grounded in theory, they require careful thinking on the part of the students, and they have clear, demonstrably correct solutions. Overall, I think I'm pretty good at writing problems, but I'd like to get better. And that's what motivated me to write this paper and to make this movie. Well, hi, here's some literature that informs my work that I'm talking to you about today. There's a great chapter in this book. It's by Novick and Basic, and it's about problem solving and includes lots of great things about problem representation. Keith Stanovich's book, often used in intro psychology classes, has lots of great content along these lines, little puzzles and problems that help get the students motivated and interesting. Deborah Hill and Andrew Gelman wrote a great book about teaching statistics that is exemplary in many other ways as well. And here's a shameless plug for the chapter that Jody Goodman and I wrote in this book on the evidence of teaching and learning. Here's a simple problem about a concept in logic related to an error called affirming the consequent. You can contrast this question to an alternative way of asking for something simpler, like a definition. Typically, students may struggle a little bit more with a question when it's presented this way. Here's another question about competency models, a technical term from my course in recruiting and selection. In this question, you're pulled into an argument. This calls for a different way of responding. Once again, over and above providing definitions. The issue that I have with telling our students what the problem is in the middle of our question is that it creates what's called prompt dependence. This is a big deal because over time, students may tend to become prompt dependent. They don't like to provide an answer until they know exactly what it is we're looking for. And as a management educator, I have a big problem with this. Here's a pre-problem. Some students arrive late to class. We need to think about this before we decide whether it's indeed a problem at all. This kind of thinking occurs before we might want to consider situation strength, or motivational theory, or any other kind of theoretical perspective that we believe bears on problems like this. Here's a more detailed kind of pre-problem. It's 2 years from today, and you have a great new job as a generalist HR staffer for a national logistics company. You're sitting around the weekly meeting at head office when the director of HR says to you, "We've just discovered through an analysis of our 360-degree performance feedback data that there is fairly widespread rude and harassing behavior among employees at certain company sites." All right, after working on this for a little while, I've come up with a few principles. One of them is that it's useful to play around with the amount of information that you provide. This forces students to deal with uncertainty in the problem space. The next principle is to occasionally introduce some non-problems. These are designed to help work on the bane of many management students, which some have called the bias to action. Lastly, you need to provide some specific strategies, like reasoning about cause and effects, mental simulation, and counterfactuals. These will help your students grapple in meaningful ways with some of the complexities of the pre-problems you provide. So to sum up, pre-problems can be used to help build skill in an important and neglected domain of management education, decision-making and problem-solving, specifically problem identification. Earlier today we talked about a couple of important principles of building pre-problems for students to use. These include varying the amount of information that we provide in order to force students to confront uncertainty in the problem space, introducing some non-problems to see how they'll respond to those and combat the bias to action that many of our students have, and practice in specific strategies, including things like counterfactuals and mental simulation. Last but not least, our students practice, and so should we.